Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Planetarium live stream. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Hopefully, everybody is able to watch and connect now. Let me just check and make sure that we're still live and everything sounds all right. And if I got a thumbs up, then I think we will go ahead and get started. Yep, looks like we are still in the clear. So welcome everyone. My name is Patrick Hess. I'm the Planetarium Manager here at Union Station, and I'm excited to welcome you to our last monthly live stream of the year, where we will be discussing in depth the Artemis I mission. So stay tuned. We're going to do a deep dive on the historic mission back to the moon. But in the meantime, I want to start by thanking our supporting sponsor, MRI Global, for keeping these programs and all the other programs at Union Station going. And I'd like to welcome everybody back who is a returning watcher, and for first-time watchers, welcome, welcome. If you're watching on December 12th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Central, then you are watching live, and this is a live stream, so we'd love to hear your comments in the comments section. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us a shout-out. Give somebody else a shout-out. And if you have any questions throughout the stream, as always, please don't hesitate to ask. This is our 89th live stream, and we started them all the way back in spring of 2020. So don't worry if you're a first-time watcher or a recent joiner of our little community, then you can find all of our past live streams on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/KCPlanetarium, where we've got a bunch of awesome programs from the past few years. I want to highlight one of my favorite sets of shows that I did, all about different sky cultures. You can find a lovely curated YouTube playlist, which I can show you over here, where we did a few deep dives on a lot of different star cultures. You're probably most familiar with ancient Western astronomy from Greek mythology, but there's a lot of other cultures throughout the world that have interpreted the night sky in different ways. So we looked at Central America, Africa, Asia, the Southern Hemisphere. So a lot of interesting topics, and you can find that curated playlist along with a playlist of many other shows on our YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/KCPlanetarium. Be sure to like and subscribe to us over there. Over 75 hours of content. And we're already getting some comments in the comment section. One of our longtime watchers, Casey's tuning in. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm glad you're still watching. Casey says, hello from hello Patrick and Union Station from Gladstone. Keep up the good work. My daughter is turning 6 years old in March and is already talking about wanting to go to the planetarium for the 3rd year in a row for her birthday. That'd be amazing. We'd love for you to come check us out and come see one of our star tours. Maybe you'll even get a chance to see me there presenting. We've got Melinda watching from Belton. Thanks for tuning in, Melinda. Deborah says, happy holidays. Right back at you, Deborah. Misty says, hello from Gladstone as well. And Tina says, I just want to say happy holidays to Union Station and families everywhere and everyone watching. Thank you so much, Tina. Happy holidays to yourself as well. Got Barbara watching from Mobile, Alabama. I love Kansas City. I sure love Kansas City as well, Barbara, and I'm loving the love from down in Alabama as well. Awesome. Keep the comments coming, everybody. A couple little housekeeping notes and announcements for December. We are open to the public at the planetarium at Union Station. Right now, we have been open 6 days a week, but actually starting this weekend, we'll be doing a special holiday schedule. But this week, the schedule is as follows. You can find our special edition Holiday Star Tour, Stars of Faith, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we're also doing Laser Holiday Magic, a laser musical light show. But starting this Friday, we'll switch over to a slightly different schedule. There we go. So we'll be open Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, all the way until January 1st, all the way through the new year. So come visit us at the planetarium and at Union Station. We have an amazing holiday light show spectacular at the planetarium and at Union Station. Holiday Reflections, our annual holiday experience, is open as well. You can get your tickets online in advance. As I mentioned, our special edition Star Tour, Stars of Faith, is available right now. And we, during this special seasonal Star Tour, we take a look at the many ways in which different faiths connect to astronomy. So, of course, we'll be talking about the Star of Bethlehem, but we also talk about we talk about the rich Islamic astronomy history and their connections to the night sky. We talk about the Jewish lunar calendar and many other topics relating to faith. So, be sure to check that out. It's a great multicultural look at how we get a sense of awe and connection to the stars above us. So very proud of that show. Come check it out. It's available every day of the week. We also have some laser shows going on right now. We have 3 more sets of our special laser encore going on, and these will be the next few Fridays. Spoiler alert, if you come this Friday, you'll see yours truly there, presenting Laser, Michael Jackson, Bruno Mars, and Stranger Things. But as you can see, tickets are selling out. Stranger Things Season 4 has sold out. No more tickets available to that, unfortunately. But let us know if you would like to see that show, because we're working on next year's laser schedule as we speak. There are limited tickets available for Michael Jackson this Friday, but we also have Queen, Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd's The Wall, and tickets are running out for those. And then on December 30th, we've got a laser 90s compilation, Lizzo and Sublime. And those are pretty amazing shows. And be sure to scan that QR code right over there where you can buy tickets in advance. And be sure to get those in advance, because as you can see, they do sell out. All right, let's check out back into the comment section. Remember, if you're tuning in now, this is a live stream, and let us know where you're watching from and if you have any questions throughout the show. We've got Deborah watching from KC Mo. Thanks for tuning in tonight, Deborah. Christina says, hello from Raytown. Hello, right back at you, Christina. And Rachel says, you're live. We made it, finally. Oh, and it's Rachel's birthday. Happy birthday, Rachel. Also, Rachel forgot it was their birthday until I announced the date. Well, Rachel, I hope that it's a great rest of your birthday, and I hope that we can celebrate in style by talking about the topic at hand, the deep dive topic for tonight, which is the Artemis I mission. So we are going to take a look at this historic return to the moon, which the mission just completed yesterday. So the Artemis I mission is our first mission, or NASA's first mission back to the moon in decades. And this mission began on November 16th, where the Space Launch System lifted off carrying the Orion space capsule back to the moon. By the way, we did a special show, or a special sort of short video clip I produced talking about the launch. So you can find that on our Facebook page. We've got a link to that we can post in the comments section if you want to learn more about the launch in depth. But we can take a look at a pretty cool slow motion video of the launch that NASA released. And so this was quite the launch. At 12:47 a.m. on November 16th, this rocket blasted off. This journey actually began all the way back in 2005 when the Orion capsule was, its design was unveiled. And in 2010, the Space Launch System itself was announced. This system reuses many parts from actually the now ended shuttle program. The original Artemis I launch date was in 2017, but space is hard, and as we know, these things sometimes get delayed. But in 2022, it did finally lift off. After a couple delays, it was actually targeted this year for August, but finally it launched, and it is now back, and we'll touch on all of the exciting mission milestones. But like I said, check out the video that we posted on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/KCPlanetarium if you haven't subscribed to us there as well, where you can learn more about the launch itself and the history of the rocket. But its mission, the Artemis I mission, was about a 4-week mission, essentially 26 days. And after it lifted off, it coasted towards the moon for about 4 days until it slingshotted around the moon, and then it injected itself into a retrograde orbit. We'll talk about that a little bit more. It's what's called a distant retrograde orbit. But during the mission, we had eyes on the rocket. There were actually 16 different cameras aboard the Artemis, or aboard the Orion capsule. That's an important thing. When we talk about the Artemis I mission, that's the name of the mission that includes all of the different modules and people and rockets and things. The Space Launch System is the rocket that actually lifted the capsule into space. And then what was in space for most of the time was the Orion capsule, which was this tiny little nose cone here where the future astronauts will be taking a ride. And then the service module, which is a little module behind it that carries a lot of the propellant and different electronics to service the command module, as we call it, or the Orion capsule. It also had the rocket and fuel used for the lunar course corrections and things like that. So I mentioned the sort of orbital trajectory and plan. Let's go ahead and refresh this. So this animation shows the path in pink here of the Artemis mission and the Orion capsule in reference to the Earth. And in pink there, we saw it took about 4 days to get out to the moon. And then it does this distant retrograde orbit, where basically it orbited the moon sort of on the backside in the other direction versus the direction that the moon goes around the Earth. And it's maybe kind of hard to picture it from this vantage point, but there's actually another animation that kind of shows it from the perspective of the moon. So in green, that's the moon, and pink is the Orion capsule. And so this shows that orbit a little more clearly around the moon, so we can see it kind of bounced near the moon and then did this big, wide, looping orbit, kind of drawing this sort of figure 8 pattern, and then it finally coasted back towards the Earth. Using the different cameras, let's bring those cameras back up. Using the different cameras, they were able to monitor all different aspects of the mission, and the cameras were actually used for navigation as well. Cameras that took pictures of the Earth and the Moon, and also took measurements of the size of these celestial objects relative to Orion, and that allowed the capsule to sort of drive itself. It's fully autonomous. And the cameras also collected data on distant stars and compared them to pre-existing star maps to fully help Orion dial in its navigation. So it actually used the stars and the planets as reference, which is pretty crazy. You think here on Earth, oh, well, all the directions are based on GPS. Well, there aren't GPS satellites beyond the Earth, so to navigate, they use the stars. I'm seeing a couple more people in the comment section. We've got Rob from Derby, Kansas. Thanks for watching, Rob. And Misty is asking, will Artemis II have people? And Misty, the answer is almost certainly yes. The plan always has been for the Artemis II mission to be a crewed mission. But spoiler alert, the Artemis I mission was such a success that there shouldn't be any delays that we know of, at least, for that mission, which right now is slated for 2024. So they've got to construct a new space launch system, and they need to clean up the Orion capsule, and not sure if they're going to build a new one or reuse this one, actually, but they'll take all the data they learned from this mission, and eventually the plan is for Artemis II to take 2 human astronauts back to the moon, and they'll loop around the moon similar to what this mission did, so they won't walk on the moon. But Artemis III, targeted for 2025 today, will hopefully carry astronauts back to the lunar surface. Ryan's asking, is it pretty easy to calculate the trajectories for launches to the moon with modern computers and our experienced astronomers? Easy is an interesting word to use for that. And, you know, I'm sure that the answer is yes and no. Easy in the sense that there are computer games you can play at home where you can calculate these types of trajectories. In fact, there's a computer game I played for one of my live streams a few years ago called Kerbal Space Program, where we actually learned how to build and launch a rocket as well as insert it into a lunar orbit. That live stream, let's see, was... when was it? Aha! It was all the way back on December 14th, 2020. So 2 years ago, just about to the day, I did a whole live stream about orbital mechanics and trajectories. So in a sense, it's kind of easy, but there are a lot of factors to consider. And also there's the fact that our universe is full of a lot of different objects, and computers can only simulate so much. In fact, if you introduce too many objects, then computers can't even simulate the movements of things in space due to just the chaos of physics and how that works. The 3-body problem is sort of the name of that, which is a great book series as well. So it's simple in that the computers definitely help us, but easy, probably not. In fact, during this mission, they had to perform a couple of unexpected course corrections, but they were still able to use computers to predict those as well. Jerry's asking, how do they figure the way they want to orbit the moon? And that's a good question, Jerry. And for this distant retrograde orbit, it was chosen because since the spacecraft travels really far away from the moon, NASA astronomers call it a highly stable orbit. And this basically lets the spacecraft reduce its fuel consumption, so they don't have to do a lot of little minor course corrections. And it allows them to kind of sort of take a big step back and allow the rocket to have minor errors so they can correct for them, so that on a future mission they could get closer. So this was a big test, and that's kind of why this high orbit was chosen. When we want to land on the moon, they'll have to choose a different orbit so that they can minimize and maximize their fuel and propulsion, basically, to get to the moon and hopefully get back from the moon to Earth. So all great questions. Getting back to those cameras. There's a camera mounted on the capsule's exterior that points towards the service module, which is actually called the European Service Module. It's designed by the European Space Agency. This is an international effort, not just involving NASA. There were cameras used to test video conferencing capabilities and to gaze into the blackness of space, as NASA says. And 4 of its cameras are fixed to its X-wing shaped solar array, which you can see here. And this is kind of funny. These cameras were actually GoPros that NASA engineers actually sort of took apart and rebuilt, but they're basically off-the-shelf cameras that they strapped to these solar panels, which is pretty cool. And then there were other cameras used to document the stage separation. And speaking of cameras, let's take a look at a few photos taken by these cameras. This photo was captured shortly after launch, and it shows one of Orion's solar arrays attached to the service module. Here's an animation showing the stage separation. The ICPS, or Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, is the stage that was used to insert the Orion capsule and service module into the lunar orbit, but it was too heavy for them to take to the moon, so they kind of jettisoned it, and it burnt up in Earth's atmosphere. And then we can see the service module and capsule leaving the Earth. And here's a nice picture, grayscale picture taken using its navigation camera. On the second day, it's already this far away of its 25-and-a-half-day mission. So a lot of pretty amazing pictures. Here's a little animation showing the solar rays capturing the sunlight. Don't look at it too long, you'll get dizzy. And there's a picture of the command module, or Orion capsule. Oh, and I should show you here. Here's a picture of the interior of the capsule. This was not a person, but a spacesuit holding a mannequin, and we'll talk about that mannequin in a bit. But we did have cameras on the inside. There's also a little Snoopy astronaut floating there, tethered to the wall. And this is actually a tool that scientists use to sort of optically and visually observe different gravitational and G-force changes. So they just decided to use a Snoopy toy for that. It's kind of floating around. That's fun. And there is a picture of the moon from Orion as it started to get closer and closer. Rob in the comment section says, upon re-entry, the capsule was so hot and it splashed down into the ocean. How did the materials not react for being so hot to the water temperature? That's a great question, Rob, and we'll talk about the re-entry in a little bit, but luckily the superheating that occurred during re-entry happens pretty high up in the atmosphere, and there's a lot of time that after the capsule slows down enough that it will simply cool via, the heat dissipation into the air, and those temperatures, I guess, are pretty nominal in that they won't really affect. They may still be hot to the touch, but they won't affect the sturdiness of the capsule. Misty says, is Artemis the most powerful rocket, or is Saturn V still the most powerful? Artemis does now take that title as the most powerful rocket ever built. Its solid rocket boosters are about 20% larger than the Space Shuttle's solid rocket boosters. It carried about 3.2 million pounds of fuel, and it is very, very powerful. So I'm trying to see. I thought I had written down some more specific comparisons, but yes, it is the most powerful rocket we have ever built. And Rob says, great pictures, unreal. Absolutely. Well, it is real. And we went back to the moon. All right, so back to our, let's see, where am I? In my notes, we talked about the cameras. So it was launched on November 16th. About 5 days later, on November 21st, the Orion capsule and service module did a powered flyby burn to slow it down as it started to transition into that distant retrograde orbit. And I've talked about why we wanted that highly stable orbit. Now, as Artemis, or as the Orion capsule went behind the moon, ground stations on Earth temporarily lost contact with it for about 34 minutes. This was expected. When the capsule goes behind the moon, we can't communicate with it. As Orion passed by the moon, it traveled about 1,400 miles above the Apollo 11 landing site at Tranquility Base. It also snapped some pretty amazing pictures during its flyby. Here is a close-up picture during the 6th day of the Artemis I mission. The Orion capsule took a picture of the craters as it was passing by. Some more close-ups. Some more craters. A lot of craters. Craters and craters and craters. So there we go. Yeah. All right, so, let's save that for a bit. Now, we knew and expected to lose contact with the Orion capsule as it went behind the moon, but actually a day or so later, we lost communication with the capsule again, but that time it was unexpected, unfortunately. So NASA did have a press release, and for about 47 minutes, they lost contact with the capsule, but they did manage to reestablish contact. But we're not really sure why, and now that the capsule is safely back on Earth, we can study its onboard electronics to determine, hopefully, what caused that and make sure it doesn't happen again. But other than that, Orion performed way better than expected during all these burns. It even saved about 75 pounds of fuel during its lunar orbital maneuvers. Of course, during this mission, they send it with a lot of extra fuel, so there are very big, wide tolerances, but it even performed better than the best-case scenario. The second course correction took place on November 25th. And at this point, Orion had traveled about 57,000 miles beyond the moon at its farthest point. And this actually passed a 52-year-old record set by Apollo 13 for the farthest distance traveled by a spacecraft designed for humans. It traveled 270,000 miles away from Earth, breaking that record. Emily's in the comment section saying hi. Thanks for watching, Emily. Hope you've had a good day. Now, I said that Orion was uncrewed, and that is true, at least by humans, but there were a number of human analogs on board, and this allowed scientists to study the effect of space travel on future humans in the capsule. There were 3 human analogs. Their names were Campos, Helga, and Zohar. Helga and Zohar are part of an experiment designed by the German Aerospace Center. There are 2 mannequins strapped back there, you can see. So 2 of them are strapped down there, the other one is strapped up there. This isn't the final configuration for humans, this was just sort of for testing. Helga and Zohar, like I said, are part of a German experiment, and these mannequins are made out of materials that mimic the bones, soft tissue, and organs of an adult woman, all of which will be tracked by more than 10,000 passive sensors and 34 active radiation detectors, according to the German Aerospace Center. Helga flew to the moon unprotected, while Zohar is wearing a radiation protection vest called the AstroRad, which was developed by Lockheed Martin, an American aerospace company, as well as Israeli startup Stemrad. So they're doing sort of an apples to apples comparison, where they have 2 similar mannequins, but one is wearing a radiation suit. So they're testing out this radiation suit to see if this type of thing can protect future astronauts from solar radiation. The third Moonikin is the one I showed you earlier, and that one is named Campos, and it tested out acceleration and vibration effects on the astronauts throughout the mission. So for what it's worth, these mannequins are now the furthest that pretend humans have traveled, but humans will be traveling there very soon, I'm sure. So after spending about 9 days in its distant retrograde orbit, on December 5th, the Orion capsule and service module completed a departure burn that started it on its return trajectory. Now, when this happened, there was a minor issue that occurred. Some of the capsule's limiter switches suddenly turned off. The limiters were responsible for maintaining the flow of power to certain components. And they were successfully turned back on, so there were no major problems caused. There was also a small issue with the star tracker system, but engineers managed to fix it by turning it off and turning it back on again. So there you go. Sometimes that just works. There are teams of people, obviously, who are going to investigate these problems so they can be avoided in the future. The teams are called anomaly resolution teams, which just sounds fun. Decided to make sure I wanted to share that. So during its return to Earth, of course, Orion took a lot of pictures, and we're mostly looking at pictures now because a lot of the hard science hasn't really been announced because Orion splashed down yesterday, so there's still a lot to be discovered, but there are some pretty amazing pictures. I love this one. This one it was taken on November 28th, and this photograph was taken by Orion when it reached that maximum distance from Earth, about 270,000 miles. And so in this picture, both the moon and the Earth look small, but the moon is still a little bit bigger than Earth. But I just love that perspective. It's pretty incredible. Here's a close-up of that view. Here's another photograph of the moon from November 30th. And a photograph of the capsule and the solar panels. They look very techy and cyberpunky. There are 4 solar array wings that provide around 11 kilowatts of electricity, which is enough to power 2 3-bedroom homes. Here's a video captured, sped up 8 times normal. So you can see I believe that's the Earth in the background, moving very slowly. And here's a video showing Orion's thrusters during its return trajectory correction burn. And this is the burn that set up Orion to head back to the Earth. These little thrusters are called a reaction control system, or RCS, and they sort of keep the capsule pointed in the correct direction by sending little jets of gas out of these little nozzles. And there is Orion. It's a picture of the moon from the side of the capsule. That's a great photo. Taken moments before Orion flew behind the far side of the moon. And there's another great picture as Orion performed its second and final close lunar flyby, sending it on its way back to our home planet. There's a picture of the capsule from the outside, and one last photo of the moon as it said goodbye. So on the 26th and final day of Artemis's or the Orion capsule's Artemis I mission, it began its re-entry. Now, during this re-entry, NASA's $20.4 billion spacecraft rammed into the Earth's atmosphere at about 20,000 miles per hour, which is the fastest for any crew-rated spacecraft in history. And this was the ultimate test before we put any human astronauts on board. Now, Orion was equipped with an innovative heat shield we've talked about before. It's designed to withstand the expected 5,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures on re-entry. But NASA also counted on what was called a skip re-entry procedure, in which the spacecraft bounced off our atmosphere and temporarily actually went back into space before it did a second re-entry. Here's a graph kind of showing how that works. Now, Apollo did a direct entry where they just went straight into the Earth, basically, into the atmosphere, and the atmosphere slowed it down. But for Orion, they decided that they would actually skip it off the atmosphere, go pretty far up into space, actually, from about 20,000 feet up to around 200,000 feet up to about 300,000 feet. And NASA calls this, or describes this as kind of like skipping a rock across water in a lake. This had never been attempted before with a capsule built for human passengers, but it should lessen the aerodynamic braking loads, which will result in lower temperatures, lessen G-forces, and a smoother ride. So to the question earlier, this lowers those temperatures to hopefully help when it does get back into the water. Orion is doing the long skip re-entry. And this technique will also make it easier, or did also make it easier for NASA to pinpoint exactly where Orion performed its splashdown. This was an issue during the Apollo missions, actually, because the returning Apollo command module could venture up to 1,700 miles away from the point of atmospheric entry, and this resulted in multiple U.S. Navy ships having to be stationed in multiple different locations. But in this case for Orion, we know pretty much exactly where it's going to land, and of course we have some photos from this re-entry. So we've got photos as we get closer. Oh, this is an astronaut who released a weather balloon aboard the deck of the ship that was looking to pick up Orion after it splashed down. This allowed them to track the upper atmosphere to see wind patterns that could potentially move the capsule off course as it came down. And here is a picture from inside the capsule looking outside. There were a couple communication blackout periods, which happened because charged plasma caused by the extreme heat blankets the capsules and prevents signals from getting in or out. The first blackout period lasted 5 minutes, second for half that time. But we did get a grainy view from inside the capsule. And then this view, looking straight up, shows Orion's drogue parachutes, and these were deployed at 22,000 feet to start slowing the capsule down while Orion reached about 280 miles per hour. And then the 3 main parachutes went into action at about 5,000 feet, and this slowed the capsule down to 20 miles per hour. And this was from the capsule moving at about 32 times the speed of sound when the entry began only minutes earlier. And then look at this incredible photo of Orion as it was coming down. Almost looks like some steam rising up the capsule there. And then the eventual splashdown. And actually, I've got a little video of it there for you. So Orion is back, and it was picked up by the boats. In fact, there is the USS Portland, the Navy ship that got the capsule. These little balloons are on top of it just in case, for whatever reason, water gets inside the capsule, and this keeps it upright so that any astronauts could still escape. And there is the boat crew coming out to grab it and pull it back into the USS Portland, where it was taken back home and is currently being studied. And well done to the Artemis I mission crew and NASA for that successful mission. And it'll be exciting to see and hear where this goes and what new exciting announcements and discoveries were made from this mission. And we'll see how that affects the Artemis II mission upcoming. But hopefully, it seems like because everything went so well, there shouldn't be any delays. If anything, this should fast track our next mission back to the moon, which will take astronauts on board. Well, that is my little coverage of the Artemis I mission. So we are going to start wrapping up here. We've got a couple questions in the comment section, and if you have any other questions, throw those my way. We've got Will saying, could you have seen Orion from Earth with a telescope like you can with the International Space Station? That's a great question, Will. The International Space Station is visible through a telescope or even with the naked eye sometimes. One, because it's very close to the Earth. It orbits very, very close relative to what Orion did, which was go pretty far away from Earth. And also the ISS has very large solar panels that are very reflective. So a lot of the times ISS can be seen with the naked eye because it's shining so much light that it actually looks like a bright star moving across the sky. But ground-based telescopes, especially ones that you can put in your backyard, probably could not have seen Orion from Earth, even when it was in low Earth orbit because of how small it is. You can look at pictures of from ground-based telescopes of the ISS, and the ISS is the size of a football field, but the pictures of it are from ground-based telescopes are still pretty grainy. So it would be even harder to get a picture of Orion. But you know what? I bet there's some enterprising astrophotographer that managed to snap some tiny grainy photo of it. So we'll stay tuned. Maybe on our next live stream, I'll pull that photo up if one turns up. And Ryan says, how many times can these capsules be reused? And that's a great question, Ryan. That's a question I had myself. And you know what? Let's just find out, because they're supposed to be reusable. But because this was a testing capsule, usually what happens is during the first test, they don't reuse these. Like the very first SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that successfully landed back on Earth, they disassembled and looked and tested out and looked at all the parts before they, and then they didn't actually send it back into space. So it's actually a museum piece now. But as far as this particular capsule, I'm not sure if they're planning on reusing it. I'm going to have to look into that. But like I said, the intention is for it to be reusable, but if I were a betting person, I would probably say that they will not reuse this particular Orion capsule. Also, this one wasn't really crew rated, like the seats weren't in the right spot and it didn't necessarily have the components. So they're probably building a separate Orion capsule for Artemis II. Can maybe even find, let's see. Yeah, I think they're probably constructing a new capsule for that. But that's a great question, Ryan. Thanks for asking that. Sorry I don't have a full answer for it, but we will find out soon enough. But I don't see any other comments, so I'm actually going to start wrapping up this stream. Normally we do a What's Up Star tour, but we don't have time for that today. We are going to circle back in the new year, and what I'll do for our next live stream, which will be during the first week of the new year, is we will do a retrospective on all the top space and astronomy stories of the past year, and we'll take a look ahead at future astronomy discoveries, missions, and eclipses and all sorts of things like that. So right now that stream is scheduled for Monday, January 2nd. We will likely keep that date, but stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to us on Facebook, facebook.com/KCPlanetarium for all the updates about that. But for now, this concludes our deep dive into the successful completion of the Artemis I mission. I've been your Planetarium Manager, Patrick Hess. Thank you again to our supporting sponsor, MRI Global, for keeping all the programs at Union Station and the Planetarium going. We appreciate your support, and we appreciate everybody's support who has watched us. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/KCPlanetarium. And the last comment from Carol says, "You're awesome. We so appreciate it." Well, Carol, I so appreciate you. And Carol, and to everyone watching, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your holiday season. I hope you have a Merry Christmas if you celebrate, and I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and friends. And Jerry says, would we learn any new things about astrology from this mission? Not sure about that. Astrology is a bit different from astronomy, but I have talked about astrology in the past. We probably aren't going to make any new discoveries about physics and astronomy from this mission, but I could be wrong. A lot of this was testing out the engineering of human space travel, but good question. But like I was saying, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy Holidays, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the year, and we will see you in the new year. And I have been your Planetarium Manager, Patrick, signing off. Come visit us, check out laser shows. Tickets are on sale now, and have a great rest of 2022. Christina says, Happy Hanukkah. Right back at you, Christina. Bye, everybody.